Listen, today I'm going to give you some game that nobody else is going to give you, but it's game that I'm really compelled to give you because it's something that I've been thinking about for some years. It's something I actually deal with to some extent, and you'll see why. But it's the dynamic that I call the business creative dynamic. Now, I haven't seen anybody anywhere speak on this, but I'm going to explain briefly what it is, and then we're going to discuss, the two types of people and things of that nature. So what the business creative dynamic is if you want to do something like the music business or anything in the music business specifically, there's going to have to be something being created somewhere by somebody. And that person is usually going to have to be creative, and they're going to have to be good at being creative. But the other thing is, when it comes to the business, if you want to really capitalize and get the money, somebody, typically somebody else, is going to have to be really good on the business end. They're going to have to be really good on the business end. Now, when you think about this, that describes two people, right? So you have somebody who is really creative and their focus is on being creative. But then you have somebody and their focus is more on business. It's more on getting the money. Now, if you have two people like this, if they're both good at their jobs, this is going to be a great team. But there are a couple issues with this that typically arise when we talk about the music business. And without going through 50 different things, independent artists usually have to wear both of these hats. Same with independent producers, which really that's who I'm talking to for the most part, because that's what I do and that's who my channel is catered towards. So as a producer or even as an independent artist, you got to wear the hat of being a creative, doing all this. But then when it's time to push the music, you got to figure out the marketing, you got to do the networking, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to give you 3 examples of people who fall into these categories before we get into it, just so you can have an idea of what I'm talking about. If you take somebody like Baby from Cash Money, you might think Baby from Cash Money, he's a rapper. Baby from Cash Money is a mogul that raps. There's a difference. So what he's really focused on is getting the money, getting the bread, making superstars, et cetera, signing artists, all of that stuff. Now, when you take one of the biggest artists that he's ever had, it would be Lil Wayne. And Lil Wayne is hyper creative. Lil Wayne doesn't write his raps. He spit a million raps. He did the most features in like '09 or '08, one of them years. It was something like over 150 features or something like that. But we know Lil Wayne is a very incredible artist, like really a extremely influential artist. But you may look and see, okay, well, Lil Wayne had Truck Fit in. Lil Wayne had, Nicki Minaj. He signed Nicki Minaj and Drake. So he's a businessman, right? Not really. He can do business, but that's not his primary function, especially in the prime of his career when he was going crazy making all them records. Now you have those two guys, right? Let's take a look at a third guy, which would be Russ. Russ is a rapper, but Russ was also independent. And when you look at Russ, not only was he creative to get on, but he also had to be very savvy as far as the marketing to get on. And this is the thing when it comes to all of the business. Russ is so business savvy that he will actually get on stream while he has a major label deal and talk about the inner workings of his deal as far as the business and how people could capitalize. He'll still give business game to independent artists as a sign artist. If you know about rap, most rappers are completely ignorant to the business side. And it's so crazy to me. I'm going to just say this, and this is not scripted or nothing. This is just me keeping it 1,000 with y'all. Like, you go all the way back to the Cadillac Records time where artists were getting, effed over. Then you go all the way to, the 90s. Like, you got TLC having, like, episodes on MTV as far as a little mini documentary and stuff like that, and them being at the Grammys talking about how they not getting paid, but they multi-platinum and Grammy winning. So you got people all in the 90s talking about getting jerked in their deals. You got people like the Locks had to go up to Hot 97 and talk about how Puff wasn't paying them and how they didn't get their publishing and they was getting jerked in their deals. So you got generations of rappers who have warned other rappers. They have warned everybody about janky deals, right? And we still get to 2025 or whatever year, but we could say 2023, 2020. You got people like Lil Uzi, Fabio Foreign, and Meg Thee Stallion complaining about getting jerked in record deals. That just goes to show you that most artists have no idea what the fuck is going on as far as the business. Like zero clue. I even mentioned Wayne. Wayne was having issues to where Baby didn't want to, let him drop and stuff like that. And, they had a big fallout about that. But all of that aside, Russ doesn't have any of that going on because Russ learned the business before he got in business. And he always stays ahead of the curve on that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those three categories and things and some of just some of the dynamics. Let's talk about the first category or the first type of person as far as, the business, somebody who is very business oriented. So you may have somebody, right? And they may be a producer, right? They make beats. The beats can be good. They can be great. They can be okay. But the thing that you notice is that this person is far more about the money in the business than the actual art. No matter how much you like they beats, no matter how good you think they is, this is the thing that usually comes forward and you usually notice this. At some point you will notice that this person really doesn't care about making beats. They really don't care about things that, creative people typically care about, like, okay, I got to make 5 beats a day, or okay, I'm trying to carve out a lane creatively as far as my sound. Anything in that realm, you see that they don't care that much about it, and they don't have a problem with falling back on beats. But if you pay attention, you'll notice that the energy that they put out goes elsewhere. And it can go in a lot of different places, like content creation or giving game, letting you know how much money they made, whatever the case may be. But one thing, when you think about these types of people, and this also goes for the record industry as well, what are one of the things that I typically see when it comes to these more business savvy people? Delegation, team building, those two things. Finding other talent to do a lot of the creative work and splitting the money however that may go. And I want you to understand nothing is wrong with this. I want you to actually see the value in this. A lot of us want to make money off of our craft. These are people who are actually very good at the money-making aspect. And the reason they are good at that is because they care about that more than a creative, but also on top of that, they put in more time and energy than the average creative and even take more risks than the average creative to make sure that the business succeeds. Now, one of the issues that could arise with this is creatively, they don't have the vision. They don't really see value in certain things that creatives see value in. But the fact that they don't see that value and they have that coldness and callousness, it allows them to make better business decisions than most creatives. But the one thing I want you to remember about this type of person, as far as this first type, they have to rely on the creative. The producer literally becomes the producer as far as making the products for the business. And just to avoid rapper examples, if you look at somebody like DJ Khaled and how he uses other producers, yet he's really not the best at making beats himself. That's a pretty solid example of what I'm talking about to some degree, even though some of the people in this category are very good at making beats. Now, this is like where the meat and the potatoes of the video is at, in my opinion, because we're going to talk about the creative very quickly. So the thing about the creative, of course, we're all creative here, right? Because you come to my channel to learn how to make beats or to listen to me talk about making beats and stuff like that. So most of y'all are producers. Very few of y'all are artists. So I don't have to explain creation too much. We are people, as far as most creatives, who are built to create art. This is our passion. This is what we do. We have to create. We're concerned about getting better with creating. We're very sensitive about what people think of our work, et cetera, et cetera. And you could take this for all forms of art when it comes to creation. There are two things that I want you to look at very quickly. Number one, we are passionate about what we do. That means we love to do it and we care a lot about doing it and being able to do it and getting better. All of the things that are encompassed within the action of making beats, making music, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if you think about some of the aspects of some of the other things that I said, we are very romantic about our work. It is like our baby. A lot of the work is precious to us. Some of the work is not that precious to us, but we still care about what happens with most of the work. We are very attached, and I'll keep it so real with you. To some degree, we want validation for our work. That's how art works. So the specialness in that is sometimes you will have somebody who is an incredible creator or a great creator or a good creator, and they are capable of creating work that a lot of people can enjoy, which is very special. And this is the thing, I want to keep it real with you. I've said on this channel before, years ago, and even recently, I'm sure, that when it comes to beats and as far as selling beats, they are a commodity. To some degree, they are a commodity. But even then, I'm going to tell you something. We are a minority of people in general. If you go to your job or you talk to, like if you get around 100 people, when you're going through Costco or whatever the case may be, most of those people don't make music. And to take it a step further, most of them don't make beats and don't let you be a musician. Most of them can't play an instrument, never played an instrument. So even though things may seem saturated, when it comes down to it, there is a lot of value when it comes to the creative. Now, this is the issue with the creative as far as all the romanticism and things that I've mentioned. Creatives are typically bad at business. Perfect example. I remember when Corey Guns got signed to Young Money and Love and Hip Hop or whatever was on, and Corey Guns was on there and they was trying to tell him how to move. All Corey Guns wanted to do was rap. He didn't want to do all the business stuff. He didn't want to do some of the stuff that he had to do to make his career go elsewhere, wherever it needed to go. And he was wildly talented, but all he wanted to do was rap. He didn't have the right people around him to put him in a position to where all he had to do was rap. And even then, let's say that's the case, he wasn't willing to do some of the things that he needed to do to put his career in a better position as far as fame and finances. Now, this is very common and it's very normal, and I'm going to tell you why. It comes down to the yin and yang of creatives liking to do the creative stuff and not wanting to do the business stuff. But let me take it a step further than that. Creatives put a lot of energy into elevating their creation. But when it comes to the business end, not only are they not good at it, but they're not naturally inclined to do it. Now, you may be asking, what do I mean by that? Well, when you look, there's a statistic out there, something like 70% of businesses, new businesses, fail within the first 5 years. So even when it comes to entrepreneurs who actually engage in entrepreneurship, a lot of them aren't necessarily built to be successful at business. And with that understanding, if you look at the other 30% of businesses within that statistic, or just people who are successful past the 5 years, I can guarantee you those people are built different. But let me take it a step further than that. There's a saying out there that there are no good billionaires as far as morally sound billionaires and things like that. And when you look at people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, you could kind of see some of what they're talking about. But even if you go lower than that to people who aren't billionaires like Grant Cardone or Jordan Belfort, and even some other rich finance gurus you'll see on YouTube, you'll notice that they all have certain traits and certain things going on. Some of the traits will be good, like they're great self-starters and etc. But some of the traits will be bad, like they lack empathy or they may be borderline sociopathic. And one of the main things that they have going on that hinders the creative is they have no emotional attachment to the work, even when they make it. So it's easier for them to make business decisions because their mind is not clouded by the love of their music and them overvaluing their music more than the market will. As where I talked to a creative who had never accomplished anything long time ago. This is like 20 years ago. And he said that his beats, if somebody wanted a beat from him, it would be $5,000 when he had never sold a beat in his life. Now, you can sit here and say, oh, he knows his worth, but let me tell you something. Spoiler alert, he never got that $5,000. But this is the main point that I want to drive home. Creatives love to focus on the creative, and the business people love to focus on the business. The business people are built to make the tough decisions that the creative is not able to make because the creative, to some degree, is blinded by their love and attachment to their own work. And when it comes down to making those cold, calculated decisions, in a lot of cases, the creative won't be able to make it because of that reason. And even then, some creatives just really don't have the knack for business like some of the business-oriented people do. So what you'll see more often than not is a successful duo where One person is more focused on the business, and they may have made beats in the past, or they may make beats now, or they may rap then and they may rap now, whatever the case is, or they may not do any of that. Like Puff. Puff didn't really rap for real. He had ghostwriters and stuff. But Puff is truly known for the business aspect of music. But then on the other end, you have somebody who is not very business focused, but is strictly focused on the creative, and they are focused on being the greatest creator they can possibly be. And in some cases, you see these guys rise to the top of the market, and they're some of the greatest creators in the markets that they're in. So when we talk about this yin and yang, these two figures work good together. So now we're going to talk about the last category, which would be the Russ type figures. If we go rappers and we just keep rappers as the example, you could look at him, you could look at La Russell, you could look at Nipsey Hussle. There's a few, there's not a lot. And if you look at online producers, there are a few of these as well, but it's very simple yet complex to actually pull off as far as what these guys do. The simple concept is they master the business and they master the creative. Even if you want to say they haven't mastered the creative, they are very good at the creative, but the business is undeniable that they master the business. They have it in them to make the decisions that will make sense for the business. They actually become very obsessed with the business to where, they are actually not just having other people take care of it. They're at the helm of a team. They are in charge of a team, and they know all the analytics. They're putting stuff together, et cetera, et cetera. And even before they had a team, they were like this, and they knew all the ins and outs of what was going on, and they were learning how to sell and market and things like that. And that's one of the things that you will notice about these people. If you take somebody that comes from that last category that I mentioned, as far as, a creative that relies on a business person and stuff like that, then you take one of these individuals right here who do it all themselves or just work heavily on both ends. The other person, you're going to see more business oriented stuff come out of their mouth than the other person, as far as the creatives that's just doing the creative stuff. The creative that's just doing the creative stuff, you're almost never going to see anything business related come out of their mouth at any point in time ever. And if we go back to rappers as an example, which this could still apply to producers, it's all fine until you figure out you're in a bad deal. It's all fine until you get dropped from the label and you have to be independent. Remember I mentioned Lil Uzi? Lil Uzi was a superstar complaining online about his record deal. But it's the deal that he chose to accept years ago. And if we look at somebody like a Nipsey Hussle actually turned down a deal. Not only did he just turn down a deal, he talked shit in interviews about turning down a deal. As where you see Bobby Shmurda and a bunch of other rappers dancing in a conference room, performing for the people in the conference as far as the A&Rs and things like that. Nipsey Hussle came in the room with a whole different attitude. And the attitude is, I have leverage. I know what I have built. You know my value. That's why you called me here. If you are not willing to pay me what I am demanding, then I do not need you. We can continue to be successful and get money and go on international tours without you. And not only is that what he did, he continued to excel. And then even after excelling, the labels, because it's all business is not as emotional as the average person would think it is. It's not personal. So they didn't take offense to him going and doing all them interviews and talking shit. They went back and offered him another deal once they seen the value hit risen, and he got what he wanted, and the rest was history. Now, when you look at this as far as producing, and if we talk about producing online or anything like that, it's very simple. The people, as far as the producers who are like this, they are at the helm of whatever is going on with their business. Not only can they rely on themselves, but once they get big enough, other people actually rely on them to some degree. Now, we're at 20 minutes, so just to keep it simple and not drag it out, you have to figure out which type of person you are as far as a creative, because I'm talking to creatives right now for the most part. You got to figure out, okay, am I actually good at business? Do I have a sales job? Am I really a business-oriented person? Have I been a hustler throughout my life? If you have been, then it's possible that you could put some more energy into the business end and become really business oriented with what you do and get that type of mind to where, because you already have some inclination to where you can excel in that area and elevate your career. Now, if you're like, okay, I don't have it, but I want to get it, that's going to be a hard journey for you. It's going to be a hard journey for you, but it is possible. But you're going to have to get a whole new mindset. You're going to have to get a whole new mindset. If I could recommend 2 books for you, I would recommend My Personal MBA. That is a book that is like the ABCs of business. And if you don't know anything about business, if you've never read a business book, even if you have, this is a extremely thorough book that is going to give you everything that you need. The second book to give you a better business understanding that I would recommend would be The Millionaire Fast Lane. Very good book. Go and read some reviews on both books. You might even want to look at a summary of both books because they're not just stories or anything like that. So you could get an idea of what they are. And then from there, you could decide if you want to pick them up or not. But those are 2 books that I highly recommend if you're trying to learn business. One thing before I get to the last category, I do have a kit that I've been teasing for months. It's going to drop soon. I'm going to drop the name now. It's called Torque. It's called Torque. It is going to be a production suite with multiple products. So be on the lookout for that in the next coming weeks or months. But as far as the last category of creatives, let's say you're a creative, you know you're not good at the business, right? And you don't want to handle the business. You want somebody else to handle the business. Well, ultimately, what you're going to want to find a way to get under somebody else's umbrella. That's what it is. There are only really 2 ways to do that. That is approaching and attracting. So if we look at approaching, what you are looking to do is to provide value for other people who are capable of providing you opportunities. Easiest example, let's say you're a sample maker and you want to, get your stuff into a splice pack, or you want to become a sample maker for splice or output or whatever the case may be, or just some online producer and stuff like that. You reach out to these people and you show them your work. Even if you want to be a producer for another artist, you find a way to be an in-house producer for an artist or a label, whatever the case may be. But ultimately, that's going to come from you networking and reaching out and things of that nature, maneuvering, moving and grooving. But ultimately, you're going to have to provide these people with value. Now, the other thing as far as attracting, what that is through you getting either placements or you getting your Type Beats YouTube channel up, or you fucking up the BeatStars charts crazy. If you're doing any of those things to where you are putting a dent in the producer space in any type of way, even if you're a sample maker, you letting out free loop packs or whatever the case may be, if the work is very good and it's getting noticed, it may take time, but it's possible that opportunities can come from that. So those are the 2 ways to go about it. But the thing about this category that you have to understand is that you will be at the mercy of whoever is running the business, just like Wayne was at the mercy of Baby when he wanted to release whatever the latest Carter was, Carter 6. And Baby said, no, we not dropping that. My advice to you when you get in that position, or if you get in that position, is be prepared or start getting prepared to get your own autonomy to where if anything were to happen, you could still get some motion by yourself. Because one of the biggest things that you could have is a name, period, point blank. If you have a name, then the name can carry you quite far. And the business term for that would be a brand. Now, one of the last things I have to say about this category is if you are trying to push for a spot as either an in-house producer or a sample maker on a website or whatever the case may be, just to be under somebody's umbrella, I'm going to tell you, you're not going to be the only person who wants to be under that umbrella. It's actually going to be competitive. You're going to be competing. And one of the things that you have to be capable of doing is impressing the right people with your beats. Guess what? I did a whole video on who you should be focused on impressing when it comes to being a producer. Be sure to click the video on the screen and go and check that out. I will see y'all another day, somehow, some way. I'm out.